Hi guys! So here we are again with another one little word catch-up video. I will say I'm struggling. I'm struggling this year, and I don't think it's because I picked the wrong word or that I don't connect with that word properly. It's just because last year with balance, it just happened so easily. It was just such an easy word to see and to act upon, and open has been harder. It's been rawer, and yeah, so I've avoided it is the thing. I can make as many excuses as I want, but I avoided it. I literally just didn't do the main prompt. It was a photo prompt, and my assumption was, and here's the kicker, I assumed that because I didn't feel like I was doing well with my word this year, that I wouldn't have many photos. So I just didn't even bother looking. I just didn't bother doing the prompt at all. I ignored it. And then suddenly June rolled around, and I thought, well, this is it now. I'm either gonna stop or put the work in. So I decided to put the work in. And when I went through my photos with a bit less assumption and a little bit more openness, I found plenty. I found plenty of photos that represent open to me. And I think the main problem here is that I've been assuming that because it's harder this year, I haven't been making progress. Maybe I haven't made as much progress, but I definitely have made some progress, and that's the point, I guess. So all I did was print out a few of the photos. I'm just about finished this notebook. I figure I can fit May and June in here, and then I'll start my second notebook for the rest of the year, which makes sense. So I'm gonna do 2 spreads with my May photos, and then I can work on June. I think I think I've got enough space in here to do the June prompt. I haven't really looked at it yet, but I know it's a writing heavy one, so I'm gonna do my photo heavy prompt for May first. So all I did was print out 3x4 landscape 3x4 photos on a 4x6, because I know that will fit on my notebook page, and it leaves me a little gap. So I've pulled out some just black and white papers and cards, because they're 4x6 too, so again it's going to be easy to fill in. And I'm going to stick those down just on the paper pages, and then I will think about what I'm going to do for the pockets. So I'm going to do that.
So like I said, I had specifically printed these out on 4x6s because I know it's going to be just easy to trim them directly in half and just stick them onto the page. I didn't want to make too much of a huge project for myself. I just wanted to get the basics done, which was to actually go through the photos and find some that represented my words. So for me, it's like the actual gluing down, like the creation of these pages is kind of secondary, I guess, because the main purpose for me anyway was just the act of going through my photos and proving to myself that I did actually have photos that represented my words. So literally, as far as creating this page goes, all I'm doing is cutting down those 4x6s into 2, well, they're 4x3s now, I guess, little landscape photos, and I'm just gluing them onto the page. Because the notebook's slightly wider than 4 inches, there is a little white gap around it, so I'm continuing that on by leaving a little gap in between the photos, which is why I cut them in half rather than just gluing them down as 4x6s. And then I just you saw how well I measured that. I just sort of used my nail to measure a piece of the pattern paper as well, which ends up being about 1 3/4 inches. So I'm just cutting off a little piece of those papers to glue down the top or the bottom. I did decide to alternate them, so on this one I've got one of the papers at the top and one down the bottom, just to create a bit of visual interest, I guess. I had wondered about maybe putting it in the middle, but I quite like the top and the bottom just because those patterns are black and white. I didn't want to spend a lot of time trying to find pattern papers that matched the random photos on this page. None of these photos are edited in any way, they're just straight out of camera shots, so a lot of them are probably darker than I would usually have had them, but again, I was just trying to get this done as quickly as possible without putting myself off with any extra effort. So the only thing I decided here was to swap the pattern paper. I'm going to put the heavier one on the right hand side and the lighter one on the left, just because the photos on the left were a little bit lighter than those ones on the right, and I didn't want to overwhelm that with that really busy pattern.
Okay, so I just went and basically typed out everything that I've just said to you on some vellum that I can pop into this pocket here, and that just explains a little bit more, I guess, about where I'm at and doesn't impede too much on these photos. And for the first pocket in here, I figured since there's no journaling or anything, it would be quite good to have my word again, just to kind of give this page a title or give the prompt a title. So I made a cut file in Silhouette, and I'm going to stick this into the pocket here. Again, it doesn't, it's not impeding any of my photos. It kind of, yeah, I like how that looks actually. I'm quite impressed with myself with that. I just did I typed out open in Silhouette, and actually, let me just show you how I did this.
Okay, so in the Silhouette software, I just typed out my word. You can use basically any font you want for this. I like a plain one. This font is called Tokyo Regular, and I've just typed that out so you can see it's still a font. So the first thing I want to do is convert it to a path, which gives me my cut file that I can then manipulate, and I want to release the compound path and ungroup it all. The reason I'm doing that is because I just want to move everything so it's a little bit further apart without missing those little inside pieces there. So just split all of that apart. And then I'm just going to go to my offset tool, and I want to offset that. I want sharp corners on this one, and I want to make it a little bit bigger, I think. So I'm going 2.3, and I'm going to apply that. Now you can see, I don't know why, when it does the inside pieces, it misses them. So I'm going to repeat that process again and apply that. So I've got all of my pieces. Now to show you what I mean, let me zoom in a little bit here. At the moment, if I fill both of these, you'll see they're both filled because they're both shapes. Now what I want is an outline, so I'm going to select both of those and go to my modify palette, and I want to subtract them. So then I just have the outline, and I can do that for all of these pieces. Now the ones with inside pieces, I'm doing those separately. It just gives me all of my outlines. So if I go and fill all these now so you can see them, and then the ones with inside pieces I'm just gonna group together for now. And then all I did was play around with overlapping these pieces, because essentially if I cut this now, this piece from the P will just drop out. It won't be attached. So I just want to manipulate these pieces until everything touches everything else, basically, and that way it will make one cut file. So when I've got it like that, I'm gonna ungroup these for now too, and then I want to grab all of this and I want to weld it into one cut file. So there's no inners or outers or anything else now, it's all one piece. I can go ahead and cut that out, and I did resize it to fit my pocket, but you can do this technique with basically any word that you like. It just takes a little bit of time playing around with it. So all I really have to do now is to slip this into the pocket, and I use that term loosely because it was slightly hard with all those little jaggedy edges and sticky out bits, but I'm gonna keep this in place in the pocket, just add a couple of tiny attacher staples and that will stop it slipping around or falling out. That will do nicely, and the vellum piece just gets slipped in. I did have to trim it down a little bit, it was slightly too large. I can't leave well enough alone though, and I had already pulled out a couple of these older stamp sets from Ellie Edwards, and I figured I would do a little bit of stamping on the photos. I probably should have done that before I stuck them all in, but it sort of works out okay. Mostly I'm using the white ink because, like I said, the photos were a bit on the dark side, so I'm using my Brilliance Moonlight white and just adding a couple. There was this, and I don't know the name of the stamp set. I will leave any links down below if I can still find them, if they're still available. The stamp set had more sort of larger phrases, kind of self-care sort of phrases. So I stamped 2 of those on each spread, and I thought that would be enough, but then I had pulled out this other little stamp set that had all these tiny little phrases, and I decided to put 1 of each of those on the actual photos. My choice was to do something more random like this, sort of more abstract, or to, I guess, journal on the photos about what they sort of represented to me, and I decided I just wanted to keep it a little bit more abstract. These photos just sort of capture a general feeling, I guess, a feeling of my word rather than a specific event. That was one of the things I struggled with when thinking about the photos for this prompt, is I didn't have any moments or specific events that I was going to have photos of. So this was a nice way to just capture the feeling of my word over the last few months.
Radio, so that is the May prompt done. Not quite as difficult as I made it out to be, which is a theme this year, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and work on my June prompt, which I know there's a 6x8 handout, and I'm going to resize something. I think there might be 3x8s as well, so I'm going to resize something to fit in here, and I'll show you how I do that and then come back and finish the prompt.
So as far as June goes, I've opened the 3x8 PNG in progress files that were included in the main kit digital download. And I'm going to resize them. You could for sure just print them at 3x8 and stick them into your notebook, and then you would either write in this little space, you could add a little bit of pattern paper behind it maybe, or just write over the edge of the cutout piece that you're going to stick on, but I'm going to resize mine to fit into the notebook. So I'm just grabbing the crop tool, and I've got that set to 11 centimeters by 21 centimeters. In inches, I think it's 4 1/4 by 8 1/4, somewhere around there. Just measure your page that you want to change it to and put those dimensions in there, and then I'm just going to drag it from the top to the bottom here. It's only going to let me come out to the edge of here, edge of the actual PNG file that is already there, but I don't want to crop out all of this writing space. I actually want to make the entire page bigger rather than smaller. So from there, I'm just going to drag that out again to the bottom of the page there and hit return. So now you can see you've got all this extra space down here. It does just look slightly weird, however, that everything's tucked up in here. So I'm going to do a little bit of altering. To do that, I'm going to go to my layers palette. This is all one PNG file, so it's a background layer. So I'm just going to double click that to make it a layer I can work with. And then I'm going to start with the top here. So I'm going to grab my marquee tool and just select all around the top piece of the title and this little subtitle here underneath. Then grab my arrow tool again, and while holding down shift so it doesn't move up and down vertically, I'm just gonna shift it along slightly so that it's visually in the middle, and then deselect that. So it looks still a little bit strange, so I'm going to extend these lines out here. So again, I'm going to grab my marquee tool, just select the lines and go Command T for transform, and then drag that out and hit return, and do the same thing on the other side. So that's looking slightly better. One thing that is just a bugbear of mine are these sort of hyphenated words and a second line for no reason. So I'm just going to tidy that up a little bit as well. This whole line isn't going to fit on here, so I think I'll just maybe grab these two words here again, just with my marquee tool, and then my arrow tool, and I'm just going to shift this up here to cover up the hyphen and sort of align it with the rest of the line. Then deselect, and then I'm just going to shift these back to the left with my marquee tool and my arrow tool. So you can see how easy it is to sort of shift things around with your marquee tool, just selecting the parts that you need. Just try not to if you select too much, like if you select all of this, when you go to move it, you're not going to be able to align anything because it will cover it up. So what you want to do is make sure that when you are doing your marquee tool that you get it as close as possible to it, and if it's not in the right place, just deselect it and try again. So that's all tidied up. If you don't like the look of the holes in it, you can just go back to your layers palette again and flatten the image, and then you have your file to just go ahead and print. Now there are 4 PNG files. I think there's 3 6x8 pages in the PDF, but there are 4 different files for the PNG files, so I'm going to go ahead and fix those as well, print them out, and then take a little bit of time to fill all of this in. So I will check back once I've done that. If you're not as obsessed with how things look as I am, you probably could have just printed it out exactly as it was. Or the other thing I thought as I was doing all this is you could have printed it out and cut all these little words into strips and just stuck them onto your page. That would have been just as easy, if not easier, because as you can see, some of these are super complicated to manipulate around, and as I was doing this I was thinking, yeah, that would have been a much easier solution for this, but as it is, I sped through it and got it all done, but that's a different option for you. So once I had printed all of those sheets out, I spent a bit of time going through my book, looking at the prompts from January and filling in all the different writing prompts, journaling prompts here, and then all I did was stick these down onto my pages of my notebook. I had an odd sort of a pocket page left. It was a choice of having this pocket page spare or one at the end. I chose to have this one spare and figured I would put something into it, and why not do sequins? So I'm going to do this sort of fairly typical filler page for me. rainbow of sequins here. I went and pulled out 4 different sequin mixes from my stash, and I've got this cardboard template that I created to help me split the page into different sections. But I pulled out 4 sequin mixes and then started sealing the page up in fifths. So I did have to go away and find another sequin mix to add into the top, which sort of threw me because of my ombre that I was doing. So I just grabbed this really pale white mix and put that in the top and then sealed it up. I'm not super careful about sealing the page like in between the stripes, but at the top you definitely do not want that to sucker to pop open. So I do double fuse that just to make sure that that doesn't happen.
So there we go, all done. That's May and June finished. I really, like every time I do this, I put it off and put it off, and I actually really love how these 2 prompts have turned out. Obviously May is a little bit more visual, which is always my preference, but the June prompt was helpful for actually getting some of these thoughts onto paper. I'm not going to necessarily share all of that with you. The only thing that I had was I ended up, when I put in my 4 pages here, the last one went into the last pocket, and then I sort of had this pocket spare, so there hasn't really been any sequins in this book at all, I don't think. So no, there hasn't been. So what perfect excuse to put a ombre of sequins into my pocket. Always a favorite technique. So this sort of breaks up some of the heaviness of the writing with just a little bit of sparkle. So I'm gonna try really hard, guys, to not put off these prompts for the next 6 months. They're always helpful. They're never as bad as I feel like they're going to be. So yeah, if you're in the same boat as me and you're struggling to keep up or keep going, just give it a try, see how you go. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It can just be really simple, I guess, and you never know how much that might actually help you. Thank you for watching. If you made it all the way this far, well done, and I will see you again very soon. Bye guys.